Welcome back. Joe Saunders is a Democrat running against Republican Fabian Basabe on Miami Beach. Basabe is considered one of the most vulnerable Republicans in the state House, thanks in large part to his myriad of scandals and clownish behavior. Now, it is a seat that Democrats should easily win. But just when the race seems set, a third candidate entered the race, a candidate who is demanding to be on the ballot as Moe Saunders. Who is Moe Saunders? Well, her actual name is Maureen Saunders Scott, and she is Joe Saunders' estranged aunt. She lives in North Florida, has done, to the best of my knowledge, no campaigning in the district, has raised little or no money. I've tried to speak to her, but she has not returned my calls, texts, or emails. Last week, Joe Saunders filed a lawsuit seeking to have her removed from the ballot, and I spoke to him shortly after it was filed. Tell me why you've taken the step, your campaign has taken the step to file a lawsuit against your aunt.
Well, Jim, I believe that what's happening in my race is the same strategy we've seen rolled out in elections in South Florida and places like Orlando over and over again. You've covered this race before. You know that this is one of the most competitive state legislative races of the cycle. It's a seat that my opponent won by less than 300 votes. It went to a hand recount. And we're running a really, really strong campaign. And so what I believe is that people who oppose my candidacy and oppose this race flipping from the Republican column to the Democratic column believe that the only way that they can win this is to cheat. And you can imagine how painful it might be to file a lawsuit like the one I filed yesterday. But I think it's really important that voters in this district have a clear and fair election. And I think it's really, really important that we push back against these schemes that are attempts to deceive voters.
So you call it a scheme. Your aunt, who we've tried to reach but so far have not been able to, simply says she's a candidate. She's filed and she wants to be seen on the ballot as Moe Saunders, even though her name is Maureen Saunders Scott. Why shouldn't she be allowed to be on the ballot as Moe Saunders?
Well, for most of my life, I've known my aunt, who is a distant relative who lives in St. Johns County, Florida, who's, to my knowledge, never been to Miami-Dade County, who has never been to this district. She's never in my life gone by Moe, M-O-E Saunders. This is one of the things we assert very clearly with lots of evidence in the complaint that I filed yesterday with the Miami-Dade County Clerk of Courts. But, Jim, I just want to be really clear about this. It's very painful, you can imagine, to have a distant member of your family, somebody that you really don't talk to very much anymore, take such a wild swing at you. But more than anything, I'm furious that somebody out there, I believe people who are opposed to my candidacy, are manipulating her. I do not think that she has the capability to have done this by herself. And what I hope is that folks like you and other reporters in the press corps, and perhaps the process of our litigation filed yesterday, is going to uncover who is doing this. And I think what we will learn is that this is another attempt to deceive and confuse voters and to muddy the waters of an election that they know they can't win without cheating.
Sure, and in her paperwork that she filed to run for this seat, she declared that she was an elector, a registered voter in Miami-Dade County, when in fact she's not. She's registered to vote in North Florida, and again claims that her nickname is Moe Saunders, and you, as you said in your lawsuit, you provide emails and tweets and other things that make it clear that's not the name she uses. She uses the last name Scott, really. That's her married name. I wanted to give you a chance to sort of comment on that, but I want to go to really the heart of the issue, which is, why are you running? Let's go back to the larger issue of this state house race, in which you're running against Republican Fabian Basabe, who we've chronicled a lot of issues with over the past 2 years that he's been in office. Why did you decide to get into this race?
You have done some really incredible reporting on the person I'm running against, Jim. I want to thank you for that, because I think that voters really need to understand his record. But even more importantly, even above the fray of my, and I think people in my district's complaints about the person who's representing us today, what I fundamentally believe is that Florida is in the middle of existential challenges that bipartisan support is required to fix. Property insurance in this state is out of control. It's displacing communities. It's displacing families. The affordability crisis is out of control. The intersection between the new condo safety reforms that were passed following Surfside and the housing affordability crisis are acutely affecting this district, my home, the place where I live with my husband, and we're building our lives. And I don't think Tallahassee is taking on those challenges, Jim. I think what we're seeing over and over again are distractions in the form of manufactured culture wars. I think it's one more day of book bans. It's a 6-week abortion ban. It's attempts to repeal the gun safety laws that students at Parkland passed and give 18-year-olds assault rifles. Like, it's just one more distraction and manufactured culture war after another. And the only way that I think this state starts to feel recognizable to everyday Floridians and working families and people like me who were born and raised here is to bring a little bit of balance back. Super majority conservative Republican House and Senate is never going to feel like the Florida that represents all of us. And I think that's really important. It's why I'm running, to bring a little bit of that balance back and to make sure that we have leadership in this district that actually represents the values of the people who live there.
Now, you previously served in the legislature back in, I think it was 2010, 2012, or 2012-14. I can't remember.
I did. It was 2012 through 2014. I was elected. I grew up in South Florida and went to Orlando for school, to the University of Central Florida. And so when I was 29, I was very young at the time, I won a seat in the Florida House and served for 2 years and was a member of the leadership team as a deputy whip. So I walk in on day one with a ton of experience. I feel like what I'll say on the campaign trail a lot, Jim, is I don't know a lot of things, but I know Tallahassee really well. I know how to navigate the halls of the Capitol. I understand how to build bipartisan coalition. And I also know how to stop really bad things that are being fueled by interests or more extreme members of the legislature, to stop things that do harm. And that's the assignment. That's what I'm signing up for. That's what I believe. That's why I believe I have so much momentum in this race, which is why I also believe they are rolling out a ghost candidate scheme in my district, just like they have in so many others. I think we have an incredible opportunity to take this seat back, and we just got to, do what we need to do to win.
After you left the legislature, what were you doing? Give folks an idea who may not be familiar with your background, what you've done over the past few years.
I have spent 19 years in the Florida Capitol, either as an organizer or an advocate or a lawmaker. This year was my 19th session in Tallahassee, doing the people's work. I've only ever worked for nonprofit organizations that work on civil rights or policy that is focused on non-discrimination. For 3 years after working in the legislature, I worked with a national nonprofit called the Human Rights Campaign and was in 14 state capitals in the country working on civil and human rights. I'm also a professor in the FIU Public Policy Department, where I teach a graduate class in nonprofit management and sometimes some undergrad classes in public policy.
So one of the issues that you've talked about is obviously the attacks on the gay community. I know that's an issue that you've worked with a lot in terms of your advocacy. Why do you think the gay community has come under attack as it has in recent years? What do you think is behind a lot of this?
Well, I think every vulnerable community in the state has come under attack, but it is true that in the last 3 years, under Governor DeSantis, and especially in the last 2 under these super-majorities in the Florida House and Senate, we have seen unprecedented attacks against the LGBTQ community. And I'll say it this way, I think Miami-Dade voters will remember the era of Anita Bryant, the era that brought us the ban on adoption by gay and lesbian families. A number of horrifying laws that took 40 years for this state to unravel. We saw more anti-LGBTQ law pass in the last 2 years than we did in the entire era of Anita Bryant, Jim. So, this is an acutely dangerous time for lots of vulnerable communities. And I think the only way through that and to get to a state that we all recognize, a state that's focused on real challenges and priorities, is to bring a little bit of balance back and to flip seats like House District 106.
We'll be right back.